Good day, baby. What is up, YouTube? It's your boy Mosey, back with Hometown Commander, back for another episode of Mosey Updates, the show where I update a deck for you. Today we're looking at the second spot in my main deck box. Today we're talking about the Great Catsby, Jetmir, Nexus of Revels, a Naya Cat Demon, 5/4 for 4 mana that says creatures you control get +1/+0 and have Vigilance as long as you have 3 or more creatures. Creatures you control also get +1/+0 and have Trample as long as you control 6 or more creatures. And creatures you control get +1/+0 and Double Strike as long as you have 9 or more creatures. Jetmir is doing very, very good at one thing, which is getting the party going when you have 9 creatures, getting in the red zone, and dealing big damage to your opponents. And that's what I tried to do throughout the course of my history with this deck. Make tokens, get the tokens in combat, and then even a 4/1 with Double Strike can be very lethal for our opponents to block when it comes to using Jetmir's ability. One of the key things that I try to do with Jetmir is to not play Jetmir until we're ready to get into combat. I think what that does is protect Jetmir so that when we finally do deploy Jetmir, that our opponents need to have removal at the right moment instead of giving them multiple turns of opportunity. As always, the deck list is going to be down in the description below. So I'd really appreciate it if you could hit the like button below, subscribe, consider becoming a member of the channel for all the videos early, interact with the video. I'd really appreciate it. We're going to talk about how we're going to make tokens. A lot of great ways in these 3 colors to make tokens, and we're going to do it. We're going to allow our tokens to be used for mana, which is a huge thing to propel our board forward, and potentially create boards that even if someone does take out Jetmir, we can still threaten the board without him. And then we'll talk about some abilities that give us big advantage on our turn to really take hold of a game. Well, the next 6 or 7 slides are going to be the same thing, which is just making tokens, right? Again, Jetmir doesn't care that 9 creatures attack. He cares that we have 9 creatures. This means we actually can take real advantage of abilities that make us tokens on attack. Things like Adeline, that whenever we attack for each opponent, we make a 1/1 human, taps it attacking that player. And Nimpakal is going to put a counter on itself and give us a gnome for each counter on it every turn. Charismatic Conqueror gives us our opponents this blind obedience style effect where whenever an artifact or a creature comes in under their control untapped, they have to make a choice. They either tap it or give us a 1/1 token. And believe me, we're going to be able to use that 1/1 token to our benefit. Goblin Rebel Master makes a goblin every turn on combat, and all those goblins have to attack. Garrett actually adds this really fun ability, allowing non-token creatures to tap to make a copy of another token that's come in this turn, kind of giving us potentially some burst if we need it in order to get more tokens out. Chittering Dispatcher, a 3-mana 2/3. This is a new card that I've added to the deck that I think is going to be really helpful with Myriad. It says when it leaves the battlefield, we create a 0/1 Eldrazi spawn creature token. So you're going to attack somebody. Myriad's going to make 2 copies of it, right, attacking the other 2 opponents. And then when those copies leave, you get spawns left behind, meaning that you're keeping that creature count. And then those spawns, right, with Jetmir's ability can become 3/1s, can be more things to hit into your opponents. Dispatcher with Jetmir out will be a 5/3, but I like that we have this ability to get Myriad, get that one-time bonus of 2 creatures during that combat, but then keep them around for continued combats. Legion Warboss fulfilling that same role as Goblin Rebel Master, making a goblin at the start of every combat. Krunko just gets bigger and makes goblins equal to its power. I've had plenty of games where Krunko was the thing that set me ahead and got me to 9 so I could take a big attack and hit my opponents. Jackrabbit's a new card from Bloomborough that just seems right, making a number of 1/1 rabbit tokens equal to its power on attack. I mean, this could be the kind of card that take us from 4 or 5 to 9 to 10 to 12 creatures and just allow us to get in the red zone there and get damage into our opponents. Ocelot Pride from Horizons 3 was exactly kind of the card we wanted to see. Play this down early game, start making the cats, and then when we get to the City's Blessing, so 10 permanents total, we start doubling every token we've made that turn. It doesn't take very long for this to turn into a big swing with Jetmir out. Polygoy, very similar to Chittering Dispatcher, having Myriad, so we're getting copies of them attacking everybody. Kind of an odd ability, right? Its power being equal to the number of creature types among all graveyard, or card types among all graveyards. So doing that Tarmogoyf thing. But what I like is that no matter what, it's at least going to be a 3-1 with Jetmir out, and it will allow us to still get good damage into our opponents. Queen Alanal is great because it's a star, where star's the number of creatures we control. And then, whenever we make a token, we get an extra soldier, and that's pretty cool because it's going to allow us to get that extra, token on top of token every time we're making them. Warren Warrior is exactly the card we wanted to see in this deck. For 4 mana, we get one of its triggers. For 6 mana, we get 2 of them. On every attack, we can either make rabbits or give all of our creatures a buff. What I really like about this bottom ability, giving all creatures +1/+1 until end of turn, is that with the Jetmir, now you're talking about giving our creatures either +4/+1 or +5/+2, right? Over the process of both of them, and that's a brutal stat line, especially when you start thinking about the fact that they get double strike, right? So you could start to see how much damage Warren Werther could include for us with that. Where a Wildfire Awakener can make some tokens, it can also convoke, which is great, and the tokens say whenever they become tapped, it deals damage to target player, so it does add some extra damage as well as combat. Now, the bad part is with Jetmir out, they do have Vigilance, so it won't trigger their ability, but it is still nice to be able to make a ton of these elementals and get to that 9 right creature figure. Fourth Orling is making 2/2s with Trample and Haste is great, allowing them to get in the red zone that turn if necessary, and then giving us the Monarch. Pest Infestation is a card I've always liked, especially in this deck, allowing you to destroy some target artifacts and enchantments and make a bunch of pests. Song of Totems is going to make a bunch of rats and give everything we control haste. This is great on a turn where you can play this and Jetmir, so that you give Jetmir haste and Jetmir can get involved as well. Temple with Vengeance is going to make a bunch of elementals, give our opponents the option to make the elementals as well. And if they do, we get another set of those elementals for each ones that did. This can easily turn into some big damage with Jetmir out if our opponents aren't being careful about taking the elementals that we give them. March of the Multitudes is a card I've always loved in this deck, being able to convoke our opponents not knowing exactly what's going to happen. Let's say we have a board where we have 5 or 6 creatures and maybe 1 or 2 lands up. Now that turns into March the Multitudings for 4 or 5 1/1 soldiers, untapping, and now we have a great attack with Jetmir coming out that turn. And not only that, but they have lifelink. Man, we're going to gain a ton of life back and be pretty much sitting pretty, no matter what our opponents have. Secure the Waste can make tokens at instant speed before our turn to set us up for a big Jetmir turn. Azeka's Chariot, another one of my favorites. I actually started playing with this on Arena first and then brought it over into the regular Commander deck. When it comes in for 4 mana, you're making 2 cats, and then whenever you crew it in attack, you make another cat. What I think is so great about Azeka's Chariot is remember that when you crew it, it becomes a creature, meaning it's going to count right for Jetmir's 9. And then when you attack, you make another token, meaning that effectively Chariot gets to +2 us on creatures every turn, right? Allowing us to get up towards that Jetmir number and dealing more damage when it matters. Battle for Bredegard makes us a token on each of the first 2 sagas, and on the third one, we can make a copy of every creature or artifact token we have with different names. This is great to set up before a big turn and really get in for damage. And then Rabble Rousing is a card that I really like and has won me a couple games itself. It comes down for 5 mana. It says whenever you attack with 1 more creatures, you make that many citizen creature tokens. This is really great because you're going to use this ability to make as many tokens as the creatures that are attacking. And if this gets you to 9, well, congratulations, you got that Jetmir bonus in the middle of combat, and it's going to get harder for your opponents to deal with it. Again, a lot of the decks' main punch comes down to dealing with Jetmir at instant speed, and if you can't do it, it's going to get very difficult for you to do. The one thing that I tried my best to do on the most recent iteration was to bring some more things in that can turn our tokens into mana. I've always had Jaheira there on the right in the deck, allowing tokens to tap for a green. We got Enduring Vitality here in Duskmourn, which feels great for this deck. Not only is it a creature, but it allows all creatures we control to tap for a mana, not just tokens. And now we can turn them in to mana. I originally had Cryptolith right in the deck, but I took it out for Vitality because I thought, well, it is a creature, so it is going to count for the creature count, and it's still going to send me the same abilities. Then it goes to the Reveler, just makes a ton of sense. On the turns where we don't need the mana, we just make that 2/2 Satyr and stack up our numbers. But when we do need the mana, we +1 it to add X mana in any combination of red or green, where X is the number of creatures we control, which can lead us to a big token-making spell or a big spell and Jetmir, right, on the same turn to really hit hard. Always loved Awaken the Woods, just making a ton of Forest Dryad land creature tokens, so they're lands and creatures. Allows them to tap for mana right on future turns for those token spells, or just be creatures right for Jetmir to use. in combat. Quarter Calling is really important because it has Convoke, meaning that we can tap our tokens to help cast it. Go get the right creature. You know, if it's something where we need to get a couple more creatures on board, we go get something like Adeline. You go get something like that. If it's something where you need to protect your board, well, we get what the creatures we're going to talk about on the next slide to really help kind of rein that in. And then Prosperous Partnership is a card I really like. So when it comes in, you get 2 citizens. So you're getting 2 citizens for 3 mana. And then you can tap 3 untapped creatures to make a treasure. This is really nice because a lot of times, right, we're making tokens on our turn and then passing, right? They don't have haste, so they're just going to sit till our opponents, through our opponent's turns. Well, on that opponent, right before our turn, if those creatures are still untapped and there's nothing to do with them, tap them down, get the treasures, and now we're untapping with more mana that we can use to get into these token spells, get into Jetmir, and take a big turn. But I think the key things that help us kind of on our turn is specifically like things like Kutzel and Mural. These are perfect Quarter Calling triggers. Kutzel says that opponents can't cast spells during our turn, which is going to prevent Jetmir hopefully from getting removed on our turn. And then whenever one or more creatures you control with power greater than its base power does combat damage to a player or draw a card. Remember, that's a Jetmir's ability. No matter how many creatures, as long as we have 3, 6, or 9, right, they're getting that buff, meaning we can draw some cards with Kutzel. And then with Mural, our opponents can't cast spells or activate abilities of artifacts, creatures, or enchantments, so now it protects us even further. And then when it attacks, it makes some tokens, allowing us to potentially even get up to 9 with it. These 2 are great protection pieces, and they're the Quarter Calling targets of my choice, if not something like Adeline, right, where I need more tokens per turn. Chamber Lambholt's mainly just here as a way to help stopgap us a little bit more. Chamber Lambholt says that creatures of power less than it cannot block creatures we control. Whenever the creature comes in, you can put a counter on Champion Lambholt. Obviously, Lambholt gets better the more creatures that come in after it. But you have to remember with Jetmir out, this could potentially be a 3-1 or a 4-1, already stopping a lot of small creatures that people are going to be able to make from blocking our creatures. And remember that because our creatures have double strike, every 1-1 is 8 damage, right? So now our opponents really have to be fearful of 5 1-1s is going to knock a player out with Jetmir out. And that'd be if they're at full health, right? If players aren't at full health, you may be talking about 4 1-1s knocking out a player or something like that. Jetmir is very good in the mid game at threatening your opponents, and you have to learn to attack the right people and twist those screws to win the game. As far as recent ads go, Vitality's great. I like Vitality; it's a great card. But what I really wanted from Duskmourn was the 2 cards that sit beside it. Toby Beastie Befriender is probably my favorite card. That I think specifically feels like it fits so well at what Jetmir wants to do. Toby says that when it comes in, you get a 4/4 beast, and as long as there are 4 more creature tokens we control, creature tokens have flying. This is a great ability because now we're even harder for opponents to block those things. And it's funny I say that because the card next to it, I think is such a good card as well. But the problem is, I think both of them are just so good in the deck. Dollmaker Shop says whenever you attack with 1 or more non-toy creatures attacking a player, you make a toy. This can easily get us 3 tokens in a turn depending on our attacks. And then if we have the mana for it, 6 mana for Porcelain Gallery to turn all creatures into Star, where Star's the number of creatures I control, will end a game very quickly with Jetmir out. I've gone back and forth on these 2 and which card I think is my favorite, but I think it's Toby because I think more often than not, that flying is going to come in huge for a deck like Jetmir, where you're going to be expecting people to chump block those 4-1s or those 4-1 tokens or those 5-2 tokens. And what I like about Toby is Toby's going to say, hey, you better have flying blockers. Otherwise, now I'm introducing another set of risks for you. I really, really love Dollmaker Shop because I think it's strictly better than both Goblin Rabblemaster and Legion Warboss, 2 cards that have put in a ton of work in this deck for me. But instead of them being 1 Goblin per turn, now you have the chance of getting multiple toys per turn, and now you're going to even easily hit that 9 threshold. Love these 2 cards, and I can't wait to be able to use both of them in a game in this deck. But we've said it before on the show, and we'll say it again. No deck's ever complete. Even though Jetmir has been together for a while, I've won plenty of games with Jetmir, and I love playing the deck. I'm always trying to figure out what the next step is for the deck. And at the moment, these are the top 3 cards on my list of do they deserve a spot in the deck. The newest one on this list is Enduring Courage from Duskmourn. Another one of these enchantment creatures says whenever another creature comes in, it gets +2/+0 and haste on a turn. I think it's obvious why every creature that coming in and getting +2/+0 and haste is a relevant ability. This will put Jetmir on the battlefield as a 7/4 with haste when it comes down, and becoming very difficult for your opponents to deal with, and even risking commander damage on an opponent the turn it comes down if you have any other buffs out. I really like it. I like that it's a creature. I like that it comes back if it dies. This feels like a great ability. I just, to be 100% honest, couldn't find the slot for Enduring Courage. I spent a long time trying to find a spot, and I just don't know that I have it quite yet, but I think it's a card that deserves that spot. Delina Wildmage is the magical Christmas land style card I would love. Delina says that whenever it attacks, you choose a creature you control and roll a d20. On a 1 to 14, you create a copy of it that isn't legendary, that's tapped and attacking, and you lose it in a combat. And if you roll a 15 through 20, you do it again. Delina seems perfect to make a second copy of Jetmir, and at minimum, you're going to make at least one. Meaning that if Delina and Jetmir are down at the same time, you're now talking about +6/+0 in double strike, which is going to be very difficult for our opponents to deal with. You're talking about a 12-point swing of power for our opponents to deal with per creature. And that seems like something that seems like a no-brainer to me. The question becomes, what does it take the slot of? Because so much of the deck is built around scaling from the early game to the mid game. No matter when you draw these token makers, they're making these tokens, they're getting involved. And so I don't know what to cut for it. And then Caretaker's Talent feels right. Drawing a card when tokens come in, making a copy of the token there on level 2 and getting the buff. It feels right. But I think the problem I have with Caretaker's Talent is Jetmir's not a deck that's looking to swindle around for value. It's a deck that's looking to get to 9 and get involved and get in combat. If I think I was looking to wait any longer, I think Caretaker's Talent would be a perfect card for the deck, but it feels like crazy to not consider it at all. But let's get into our playtest. That's what we come here for. That's what we love to do. That's what I love to do. So let's take a look at her. 4-lander with Flawless Maneuver for some protection, Jackrabbit and Krenko. I like this because ideally we'll be able to get Krenko and Jackrabbit out and start mining them for value. Here we'll crack that Foothills, and this is one of my main decks that I do play fetch lands in. I do only have fetch lands in 2 of my main decks. Jetmir that we're talking about this week, and then a Layla that we're talking about next week. So I do play them in some of them, but not every deck. It's just this deck is a ton of fun. I can take advantage of them. Turn 2, we see Regal Bunnycorn, a card that actually just got added back in the deck with Beauregard Mentor from Bloomburrow. These stars, they get bigger for the number of creatures you control because they just seem like they're going to hit really hard with Jetmir along the way. So we'll get Regal Bunnycorn down here on turn 1 or turn 2. It's going to come in as a 1/1, but that's A-okay. All right, so turn 3 here, I can get the Soul Ring down. That leaves you with 4 mana. I cannot play Krenko and Jackrabbit, but I have to choose my choice between the Dispatcher or Krenko. Krenko couldn't attack this turn, but it could start attacking next turn, right? I think, well, let's think about this. If I'm going to play the Soul Ring this turn, I think it might be a better idea to play this tap land this turn, get the Soul Ring down. I think I'd kind of rather get Krenko down. Take an attack with a Bunnycorn here on turn 3 as a 3/3, right? Because it's non-land permanents. And move here to turn 4. Now we're at 6 mana. I kind of love the idea of maybe like Dispatcher plus Jackrabbit. But we have to think, right? We're 2 creatures right now. Krenko is going to get a counter on attack and make us 2 goblins at least. So we're at 4. Jackrabbit would be 5. The thing I'm thinking, and I don't think I have enough mana to make it work the way I want to. I actually may just have enough. My thought is Jetmir plus Jackrabbit. This gets me to 4. This means everybody gets a +1/+0 buff, right? So Krenko would start as a 2. We would move to combat. It would get a counter. And then make tokens equal to its power, making 3 tokens, right? So we'd only be at 7. Okay, I want to kind of think about that world where we get in hard this turn, and try to do that. But I don't know that that's what we want to do. It's not a bad thing, though, because then Regal Bunnycorn is going to hit really hard with Vigilance, right? Because of Jetmir, and then Trample, right? Because we'll have hit the 6, so it's going to hit pretty hard as a I don't know, 7/7. So that was my thought. My other thought was just Chittering Dispatcher plus Jackrabbit. Jackrabbit would come in with one counter, attack with Krenko, get the 2/1/1 goblins. And now I'm pretty much telling the table that Jetmir's coming down here on turn 5. I've got 6 creatures now. Next turn when I attack, 7/8 with the Dispatcher, a bunch more goblins with the Krenko, and Jackrabbit will make a bunch of rabbits. And that's going to be a brutal combat for our opponents to deal with, especially on just the Bunny Corner alone. This just goes to show you how Jetmir, in this mid-range style, can make a ton of tokens. The only bad part about this playline is that I don't have this flawless maneuver, right? I think if I take this playline, right, where I do this turn, attack with these two, I still get, and I actually would get an extra goblin, right? I keep this flawless maneuver up to protect the board, and now everyone's dead on my turn. At least 2 people are dead on my turn, because Jetmir can attack. It's an 8/4 at the moment. Jackrabbit's going to be making... if I put Krenko first, it's going to be making 3 or 4 rabbits. Either way, I'm getting to 9. This is going to hit hard. This is going to hit hard. The Krenko is going to get hard. And then now you have a Regal Bunnycorn that's a 12 or 13 with Double Strike. And you can start to see how this is going to add up. I mean, this turn 3, turn 4 window, depending on what you draw and the way that I've built the deck, comes down to sequencing right and trying to find, the right game plans to get yourself in. I like this here because you have the maneuver to protect the board. And now on turn 5, if no one's made me use the maneuver, now I have the maneuver for free on my turn, and someone's got to aetherize this board to stop this from just being brutal, So we'll go to playtest number 2. I know that that's kind of Christmas landing, but I think it goes to show you that, like, when it hums, right, the deck can be really good. Why would I keep a 1-lander? That's kind of odd. I don't know why I set that one aside. So let's re-mulligan and go here. Here's a better 3-lander with Goblin Rebel Master, Beauregard Mentor, Garrett, and a couple lands. I like this one. This one looks a lot better. Draw for turn 1, and we'll go ahead and crack that Foothills for Jetmir's Garden. I normally try to screen my hands a little bit. I don't know why I kept that one. Maybe something was wrong with it. Or maybe something happened to it when I saved my spot. Turn 2 here, I think we just go Beauregard Mentor, right? Get it started, has trample, equal to the number of creatures we control. So now next turn, right, when we get the Rebel Master or something like that online, we're going to have the party jump in. Turn 3, we have a choice of Garrett or Rebel Master. I like the Rebel Master because that's going to get me a Goblin this turn. So now that Beauregard Mentor is attacking as a 3/3, that Goblin has to attack. But that's okay, if it dies, it dies. The point is that we're getting this engine started. Here on turn 4, a couple different options. We could gear it. Let's say this goblin didn't make it, right, for the purposes of this. If I gear it using these 3, I've got 1 mana left. Go to combat, make the goblin. Gear it makes a copy of the goblin. I don't think there's a world where I can Court of Calling, was what I was trying to figure out. Right? It'd be 1, 2. I don't have enough. Well, it'd be 3 green mana. The Goblin and the Rabble would be 2, but I don't think there's anything relevant for 2 that I'd want to go get. So I guess what we would probably do is just make the Goblin, tap Geared to make the Goblin. I guess. If Beauregard Mentor has a good attack, I would do it. Otherwise, I'd tap it to make another Goblin and just swing with some Goblins. Maybe, a couple of them survive and we have the access to them for another turn. Now here on turn 5, we've got 5 creatures. If I play Jetmir, that's 6. Rebel Master makes 7, 8, 9, but they don't have haste. Oh, they do have haste. So I could get a couple attacks in there that way. I kind of just wonder, is it worth... Let's see. Jetmir would leave me up with what? 1 white. Move to combat. Goblin, Geared taps for a Goblin. Beauregard Mentor taps for a Goblin. These are all 4/1s now. Not a bad attack. Could potentially threaten somebody to knock somebody out, and our opponents have to deal with that. And then on our next turn, right, we just Orlingas for, for big value there. I think that makes the most sense to me because now these guys do have vigilance. I mean, they could convoke for Court of the Calling, but I don't have any other green creatures to tap for that convoke. So I don't think I could convoke there, but I think that makes the most sense. Goblin and Rebel Master could attack here. It would be a 5/2 that becomes a 9/2, right, if I don't tap it. So that's a pretty big threat, right, to our opponents. And I think that kind of just goes to show you that mid-range threat that Jetmir can become when we get it involved. Let me know. What do you think of Jetmir down in the comment section below? I love this deck. It's a deck I always enjoy playing because it's a Rube Goldberg puzzle. Try to get to 9. Try to get to 9 effectively, get in, deal that damage, and have some fun. But that's all I have for you this time. I'd love to hear what you think down in the comment section below, and I'll catch you guys next time.